Hello, this is Katie and today I'm bringing you one of my essential techniques videos. So it really is a really basic, simple technique of how to make these little links. So the technique that we're going to be using is a simple loop. So to make a close, simple loop with a bead in between, so each one of these little loops are openable so you can add your next loop. So you can do this with any size bead, any shape bead, anything you like really. You can change up the size of the wire, just work in relation to what you're actually making. So always think about balance, size of the bead, size of the loop. So for this demonstration, I'm using 8mm round beads, and I will be using my loop is the smallest one on my baling pliers. You can also use your round nose pliers. Just if you are using round nose pliers, just make a little mark so that your loop is the same size every time. So just use a little Sharpie pen and make a mark what size you want your loop to be. You can see the remnants of previous marks that I've made on those, and that will ensure that your loop is the same size every time. But I'm going to use my baling pliers just for ease today, and you will need some flush cutters and some chain nose pliers. So the smallest size on here it's approximately about 2.5 mils, I believe, on there, but as long as you use the same one throughout to make sure that you're happy with the balance of size of loop to size of bead, you're absolutely fine. So the wire that I've chose to use is a 19 gauge wire, which is your 0.9mm. I tend to work in UK terms, so I'll be using 0.9mm, which is, like I said, a 19 gauge wire. You can use whatever wire you prefer. I generally don't go lower than a 0.6mm, which is your 22 gauge wire, but you can do as long as you keep your loops very small if you're going to go lower than that, just for the strength of things. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move some of these out of the way. So you can see I've already made some of my chain. Just pop that right up there, and I've got lots of my little links made up. So what I tend to do is I pre-thread onto my reel. This way I'm not going to waste any wire. Everything's, you know, the waste is absolute minimum with this technique. So I'm just going to unravel a little bit there, just so that I've got some wire to be working with. Just pop that to one side a little bit. Now, first of all, you want to find out what length of wire you need for a loop, just to give you a kind of little guide. So you're going to pop your pliers right at the very end. You shouldn't be able to feel it on this side of your pliers, and you're just going to make a loop all the way around. So you're going to turn, reposition, turn again. So you've just made a loop all the way around. Now when you get to this point, what you're going to do is you're going to pop your pliers in so that the other side of your pliers, and this works with baling pliers or your round nose pliers, you want to come as close to that loop, the end of this loop, as you can, and then you're just going to push back, and that's going to give you that really nice lollipop shape. So now what I want to do is now I've got that kink in there. I kind of want to undo that. We are going to be kind of wasting this wire, this little piece, but this is going to give you a little guide to work to. So if you've got nylon jaw pliers, you can kind of smooth that little bit out with those if you want to. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, but what we're wanting is to get that length. And on average, for this size that I'm doing, it's usually around about 1 centimetre. So then what you can do is you can cut off that length. So cut it off just past, so it's just, and you see where the little bend is there. You don't want to be too close to it because that's going to add extra length. But this little piece here now is going to be a little guide. So that's your approximate guide. We want it as close to that as possible. That very, very end, we're going to cut that off. And now we want the end flush cut. So by flush cut, I mean cutting with the flat side of your cutting pliers, your flush cutters, side cutters, whatever you decide to call them, closest to the work we're going to keep. Okay, now we're going to go in with our bail making pliers or round nose pliers again. So again, right at the very tip of your wire. We don't want to be able to feel it at this side. And we're just going to start wrapping, and then we're just going to open them up slightly, reposition, and take that so it's all the way around. So we've got that loop. So if I take that out now, you can see we've got this loop, but it's kind of like a 9 shape. We don't want that. We want a lollipop. So we don't want to be bending here. We want to bring these pliers all the way around so that the opposite side, the one that we haven't gone round, whether it be baling pliers or round nose pliers, is as close to where we ended the end of that wire as possible. And then you're going to push that back towards, and you will end up with a very nice lollipop shape. So now we've got one end on, we're going to bring up our piece of wire. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pop our chain nose pliers in there right at the very tip. Now we don't want a lot of movement on this, so we just want to be, there we go, you see it's only like about 1 millimetre away from the bead, and we want to make a little kink in that, so we're just pushing that away. Sorry, so we just made a little kink in that, we've pushed it away. So now we're going to take our cutting pliers, our flush cutters, and remembering that little length that we had, so we don't need to hold it up exactly, we know, so it's around about 1 centimetre, but you can see that is where we want to be cutting. So we're just going to take it in. If you're not sure, cut it a little bit longer, then offer it up and think, no, I just need a little touch more off that, and you can take that little bit extra off. Okay, now we're going to go back to our baling pliers. So let's just move that out of the way a second. So we're going to go back to our baling pliers. We're going to make sure this right size is on the inside, so we're going to roll it back around towards itself. We're going to make sure we're right at the very tip of that wire, and we're just going to roll it back on itself. Okay, you're going to open them up, change position a little bit, and roll it back. Okay, so then we're going to have 2 loops, one on each side. Now they may be a little bit squiffy. Can you see they're a little bit not straight? Don't worry about that. You can just pop in your chain nose pliers and bend them. Now what we are looking for is our loops to be in line with each other. We don't want, we don't want that. We don't want one sort of facing upwards, one downwards. They need to be both in the same direction, and that will give us a really nice flowing chain. Okay, so I'm going to go through all that again. We don't need to do that little beginning bit again. We will need all our tools handy. I've got some of my beads. These are 8mm beads. You can use whatever you like. Onto my wire, just make sure I've got a little bit of wire unreeled. My wire is still attached to the reel, therefore we're not going to get as much waste as we may do other ways. We're going to make sure the end of our wire is flush cut, like so. So we're just going to discard that little piece. We're going to go in and start our first loop. So I'm going to pop my wire right in between. So this is the smallest one. This is the one that I'm going to wrap around. I'm just holding that. I don't want to be able to feel it at this side. I'm just going to take that until it's all the way around. So just work it round until you can't go any further. And then you're going to position your pliers so that where the cut end of the wire is, the pliers come towards that. Can you see that there? And then I'm just going to push against this other opposite mandrel, and that will give us that nice lollipop shape. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my bead like so, and then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers. Now this is a little bit that some people sort of think, oh, why is it going wrong? This is the little tip that makes everything sit in the right place. So what you want is your chain nose pliers with just a tiny gap. Can you see there's just a tiny gap just on the tip, tiny gap between the bead and my pliers, and then I'm just going to make a little kink in it. Okay, so that tiny gap allows for your bead to have a little bit of freedom to move, and it allows for that turn in the wire. Now we're going to look at the little sample that we made earlier. So there's my little sample that I straightened out earlier from when we did that little test loop, so we got the right length. So if I want to, I can just hold that next to, so I've got a guide to where I'm going to cut, so I know I'm going to cut here, and then I can go in making sure I cut flush side, so the flush side of my pliers towards my work. Give that a little snip, just offer it back up again just in case you moved or anything. So I might just take just a tiny little bit off the end of there, just a tiny little nibble. If you find you have cut it too long and then you wind it up and you wind your loop in and it's too long, you can just unwind it a little bit and snip a tiny bit off, it's no problem. So we've got this little angle, we've got our length cut, now we need to wind it back down. So again, pliers right in, right at the end of that piece of wire, and then we're just going to start. I tend to push the bead round mostly at first, and then I can just reposition this and bring that in, and that's going to give me that lovely same size loop as the opposite side. And again, just take your chain nose pliers and just work that in, and what you want is your loops to be the same direction. So you can see both loops are facing upwards, both loops are facing downwards. We want everyone to sit like so. So work your way along all your beads that you want for whatever projects you're going to make. This isn't actually a project, I'm just making a chain basically. So, but you could easily make this into a necklace. There are lots of videos on my channel for making clasps and such, so you can have a go at that. So now we're going to add more of my links. So you're going to start with one link. Obviously I'm going to start with the one that's already attached here, and what you're going to do is you're going to support your link and you're going to open up one side of it. So every one of these little loops that we made is openable. So I'm just going to hold that and I'm going to open it, and I'm opening it by twisting my wrist like so. So I'm opening it by twisting it upwards. So it opens up like a little door. Can you see it's kind of like a jar at the moment? Then I can pick up my next one, pop that on, and then I'm closing it in the exact same direction. So like so, nice and closed. Make sure it's nice and closed and finished. What we don't want to do is open up our links this way. So do not do this. Don't go like this, because that means that you're not really, it's not going to get back in the same. Can you see? It's not quite right. It's not perfectly round. I mean, it might kind of look okay, but to me that would be one that would I'd snip that piece of wire out and start again. So that's a void one for me. So I'm just going to add another bead. So I'm just going to take my little link, open up my little door, so holding it nice and firm, supporting everything, opening up that little door, and then adding on. So you can open up either side, as long as one side's open to link the opposite side in, that is fine. So you can just keep on making, keep on adding until you've got the length that you require. So there you go. That is how to make your beautiful simple loop linked beads. So it's just creating that lovely simple loop and really taking time and care to make sure all these loops are the same size and they all are balanced with the bead that you're using. You don't want to, so can you imagine if I was using a really big size loop, it would look a bit clunky, it just wouldn't look right. So make sure you look for balance in all of your pieces of jewellery, and then you can go ahead and make lots of these gorgeous little chains, which work super well. And unlike the traditional rosary link where we wrap loop them, which is beautiful, I do use that quite often, this one can be chopped and changed. So you might think, oh, I want to put a bigger bead in there. You can just open this up, make a bigger link and pop that in there, so it's all nice and changeable. Great for earrings too, because you could just link them down from your earrings. Yeah, really versatile. So thank you for watching. I'm loving making these videos. I know I don't always get one on every week, but I am trying, I do promise. I've just had a really big sort out in my workroom. So I've sort of rediscovered lots of things that I've bought that I thought in the past that I thought, oh gosh, that would be a really good tutorial. So I've got lots and lots of ideas buzzing around in my head, and don't forget to look out for my workshops on my website too. So I will see you again soon. Don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe, then you won't ever miss a thing. Click that bell and select all, and I will see you again really soon.